Well, hello, everybody. We're going to do this a little quick. I'm just going to share real quick the recent interview that it was done. If I'm not mistaken, it was either the 14th or the 13th, but I think it was transmitted on Sunday, this last Sunday. So we're going to watch it together without interruptions from YouTube.
You lost. And you know what you did.
I'm attorney Andrew Myers, co-host Jolie Medina, a California attorney, is with us. Jolie, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Joining us today on the panel, Michael Wilcox, an attorney in Massachusetts who represents the family of Enrique Delgado-Garcia. How are you today, Michael?
I'm good, guys. Thank you for having me.
I'd ask my viewers, if you're not up to date on this case, you can go to our previous episode that I'll put down in the detail section. Michael Wilcox represents the family of Enrique. And just first of all, Michael, what was your initial reaction when you heard that there were 4 indictments?
We heard on Friday last week that they were coming down with indictments. We didn't know the specifics, obviously, until Monday. But they... a little bit of surprise, to be honest with you. You kind of hope the system will work and things will play out the way that they have here, but you get skeptical over time. You know, you sort of, I was a little bit surprised, actually.
Well, actually, the attorney that was the special investigator, Atty Myers, said that they had kept in touch with the family all along. Is that not true?
No, it is true, but he was not. So he didn't make the decision to seek the indictments. I mean, he presented the evidence. The grand jury, my understanding is this grand jury was sort of fairly upset about the facts as they understood them. And they on their own decided to indict. And they were given instructions as to what the elements of the various offenses were. And they indicted on it. He was adamant throughout this that he did not want to seek indictments in a case that he wasn't sure he could win. This is a very difficult case because it's based on basically malfeasance coupled with some nonfeasance. You know, they didn't do certain things that they were required to do. And that's sort of a tough criminal case to point. There wasn't really a direct malicious act here. You know, nobody struck anybody with the intention of hurting them or stole something from somebody. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't abide by their oaths as state trooper instructors. So I thought it was a little bit of a surprise, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was actually surprised as well. And I was actually surprised that I think it was Myer, the attorney, said that there was a legal duty owed to Mr. Delgado Garcia. And you know, normally you don't really hear that. Right. And I mean, normally you don't hear that kind of language, but that was pretty powerful, I thought.
Yeah, Dave Myers is kind of a unique person. It was sort of encouraging when he was appointed to do this because, I mean, he'd be described by people who know him, appropriately described as above reproach, highest ethics. You know, he's not going to rest until he gets everything out. He took a long time to do this, not because he was dragging his feet. He put a lot of people before that grand jury. He put a lot of exhibits into that.
150 people were interviewed total and 350 exhibits total. We understand that attorney Michael Wilcox has been their family lawyer since September 18th, 2024.
Grand jury. He did a lot here to make sure that this was being done fairly and objectively as well.
Well, one of my questions, and I want to play devil's advocate, but you said that they weren't intending. It sounds to me like they were intending something. No, it wasn't M1 and it wasn't M2, but involuntary manslaughter, motive is not an element of that crime, but there was some intent. I mean, don't you think?
I think that Dave offered the evidence as he understood it to be, and I think that he allowed the jury to evaluate that. And I think they arrived at the conclusion that this was an involuntary manslaughter based on willful, wanton, and reckless conduct.
Okay, so go ahead.
It wasn't murder 1 or murder 2. It wasn't even manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter. It's involuntary. So it's sort of a little bit of a gray area. So it's based on the conduct that was deemed to be willful, wanton, or reckless in terms of how the various.
And that's where I need help. Because as he said, it has to be.
It wasn't murder one or murder two.
Why?
It wasn't even manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter. It's involuntary.
Why?
So it's sort of a little bit of a gray area. So it's based on the conduct that was deemed to be willful, wanton, or reckless.
Which Attorney David Myer said that the previous 2 weeks showed evidence that led to the September 11th situation and then the September 12th. So I'm having a little bit of issues here understanding why is it involuntary manslaughter.
In terms of how the various actors here played their roles.
Now, I was going to ask, what about the perjury charge for one of the four that were indicted? I mean, that sort of goes to when she knew he was incapacitated, or when she knew of his injury initially. And that's another thing you rarely see. I mean, a lot of people go up on the stand, but cops and troopers and things, and they might say something, but they never really get charged with perjury that I've seen. And this one they did.
Right. I think that's why I've sort of concluded that the grand jury was fairly upset here. I think that they felt slighted here. I think that they felt that there was an attempt at some form of cover up. I mean, my understanding was that the sergeant who was indicted for perjury was indicted for perjury because she was asked a direct question about what she knew when. Mm-hmm. And that pertained more to the concussion-like symptoms based on the incidents the day prior to Enrique's death. So I think that my assumption is, and of course I wasn't in the grand jury for their deliberations, my assumption is that they felt that was a bit too far.
Which means that if they actually charge her with perjury, understanding that she lied, it means that she lied because she knew, which means that she had prior knowledge. And that's the gray area where I am a little confused. That
for her to get up there and not tell the truth, it goes to consciousness of guilt. It goes to, just an effort to sort
of. No. Also knowledge, previous knowledge that she knew.
Sort of conceal from the grand jury. And I think grand juries get upset when they see that. And I think that you're right. I think most prosecutors in most cases around the country sort of turn a blind eye to some of the police testimony that is determined to be false. I've never seen a police officer charged with perjury in the context of my criminal practice, ever.
Well, it's pretty rare, that's for sure. Now, grand jury proceedings, as we all know, are secret. We're not supposed to see it for policy reasons. But from your understanding of what happened, what was Myer looking for? What you say that the grand jury, almost sua sponte on their own, decided to go for the involuntary manslaughter. What was Myer looking for?
Myer was looking to get all of the evidence in front of them to have them evaluate it. And my understanding is the grand jury was extremely upset with the facts of this case. And I think that if you sort of follow the evidence, they should have been. I mean, this is pretty outrageous conduct. And I think that Mr. Myers did not go into this. And remember, this is an investigative grand jury that indicted. That's also fairly unusual. So he didn't go into this with the idea of he was seeking indictments for particular offenses. Mm-hmm. He went in and put all of the evidence in. It took months and months and months, called many, many witnesses, offered, I believe, 350 exhibits, had expert testimony. And I think at the end of the day, he gave them the option. They didn't have to indict. They could make findings that would indicate what they found or what they believed to be the case. And they chose to indict on these offenses. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Myers and his team instructed them on the various elements of each offense, but I don't think that they went into this with the understanding that we need to indict people. I mean, that's what makes it more of a pure exercise, and that's what makes it encouraging.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's true, because the grand jury was looking at the case for 9 months, I think.
Yeah.
And that's a long time.
Normally we all say the same thing. You can indict a ham sandwich if you want. I mean, right. Except, it's very easy based upon the probable cause standard to obtain an indictment. But when you're not looking for the indictment, but you're simply looking for findings and looking to find what happened as an investigative body, and then they render indictments. That's pretty powerful stuff in my estimation.
Now, what were they doing on that day? They were boxing. Apparently, it went too far. Obviously, that's clear. My understanding is that the new colonel, Mr. Noble, has temporarily suspended boxing as part of the program. So, A, do you think boxing should even be a part of this program? What part does it have to play in training, state police troopers? And two, what is your understanding as to will it return in some different form in Massachusetts?
I can't imagine it will ever return, starting with your last point first. I can't imagine that it's ever going to return. There have been several. There was a case in New Jersey. There was one, I believe, in Texas. And there may have been one in California where a trooper was injured in a boxing training exercise. The one in Texas, the young man was killed. And I believe the one in New Jersey, the young man was killed. I think that what we know about boxing today, and you've heard this in the it's in the ether, right? Boxing is dangerous. Concussions in football are dangerous. Banging people's heads is not ever going to result in a good outcome. You hear this all the time, and there's been a lot of talk over the years, over the past 20 years or so, about should we even allow boxing at any level? Forget amateur boxing, professional or otherwise. Is boxing unreasonably dangerous activity? And I think the answer is pretty close. It probably is. And I think it's made more complicated in this case by the fact that these are not professional fighters. They haven't been trained to take a punch. They haven't been trained to.
The students aren't, but there's some of the trainers who are.
Deliver a punch. They haven't been trained how to protect themselves appropriately. And I'm going to just posit this one question. If you can make the argument that police officers need to have some competence in hand-to-hand combat because they're interacting with people who are unstable in all sorts of crazy situations. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Why did they have this fight go on after Enrique was knocked down one time?
Exactly.
Why did the fight need to go on?
Exactly.
Was this a bloodlust? Was this who's got the bigger ego type of thing? I don't know what the purpose of continuing it was. Assuming we accept for the moment that boxing has some role in training a police officer, which I personally don't agree with.
Right.
Assuming if you can make the argument that was true, why does it continue after it's clear that one person in that match is clearly outmatched?
Well, I asked you two questions. I'll give you two answers. One, it seems like it was an intentional act. I mean, beyond the willful, wanton, reckless conduct that Mr. Myer is talking about, it seems like it's almost intentional. That's my first answer. My second answer is there's a karate studio around the corner from one of my offices, and I see kids in there. They have a great big plate glass window, so you look in, and the kids are in there, but they're supervised. The kids that try out for football at the high school, in every high school in America, or at least here in New England, that you and I are both familiar with, that's a rough contact sport. But there's always, coaches and teachers, supervising and teaching them. And, so why didn't the Massachusetts State Police do what a kindergarten class can do? Why couldn't they do that? That's a good question, because I forget the exact dates, but I think it was September 11th that he took a horrible blow.
Right.
On the 12th of September 2024, he went back and they continued the fight, like you just said. Then he was taken to the hospital and died the next day. So it would seem to me that if a karate studio in every high school in New England can properly supervise kids, why can't the Massachusetts State Police?
So I'll give you. So I coached youth football in my time.
Okay.
I went for a time in Shrewsbury, Mass.
Okay.
And we had a program where kids had to be evaluated before the season for their concussion. There was a concussion protocol established so that you knew whether a child had prior concussive events, whether the child was having any sequelae of head trauma. Mm-hmm. And you didn't allow that child to participate if there was any finding of any degree.
Exactly.
I don't understand how my son suffered a bilateral subdural hematoma and a fractured cervical vertebrae.
Jesus.
And concussions to his upper torso.
Jesus Christ.
What was the point of this? Were they training him to how to become unconscious? I don't understand what the point of this was.
Yeah.
No.
So I agree with your point there that it does sort of lend some credibility to the notion that this was, this is like who's got the bigger what. This is it was just that macho nonsense. And the state police boxing team had many members in attendance this day. Was this a tryout for the boxing program? Or was this training? Because if it's training, I don't understand why, if you assess two particular combatants and one's clearly superior than the other, why you would let that happen. This is a human being. This is not a joke. This young man died at 25 years old from blunt force trauma to his head. And he had subdural hematomas on both sides of his brain and a fractured cervical vertebrae.
Oh my God.
It makes no sense to me. It really makes no sense to me. I mean, in our last episode where we first talked about it, we didn't have the benefit of you being here to explain it more in depth. I'm saying, well, when state troopers do a motor vehicle stop, we've all seen they don't know what to expect. And you go into a rough city like Holyoke, Springfield, Boston,
right. Anywhere.
You don't anywhere. Okay, you're right. Anywhere. They don't know what to expect. So maybe it's a good thing to have them be tough guys and train. But there's got to be supervision, I would think. And thank you for explaining your history as a coach. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when do you ever see a police officer boxing with a suspect? I mean, you don't see that.
Never.
I mean, they're trained to try to detain or, stop the person from doing any further harm, not to engage with them into a fight, which boxing is an engagement sport. You got to both be doing it. So there's other ways. It
would make more sense to teach them a martial art in the sense of rendering someone, neutralizing someone in a hand-to-hand situation, like late at night on the side of the road when there's no help around. But they have non-lethal weapons available to them. They have tasers. They have tear gas or some equivalent of that pepper spray.
Right.
They have batons. They have training in how to subdue someone using techniques, not boxing. How to arm hold. All sorts of techniques that they are trained in. And I would think that if boxing was so useful, wouldn't it be universally taught? Most police departments don't do this. Why? Because it's not necessary. And you're exactly right. You don't see police officers squaring up in a boxing stance on the side of the road. They are grabbing a hold of people and they are subduing them. That's what we want them and need them to do. And we want them all to be safe. Believe me, no one wants to see anybody get hurt here. But you don't see a police officer put up your dukes kind of stuff. It just doesn't happen.
No. Okay, so Enrique died in September of 2024. The very next month, October 2024, the Massachusetts State Police got a new colonel, Noble, and he has expressed the statement that things are going to be okay. We're going to have significant changes. They're going to, override some of their past practices. Do you have any faith that that will happen? And if so, have they ever reached out to you or anybody that you know to have, citizen participation in that process?
They haven't. When Trooper Noble, Colonel Noble became appointed, he called us shortly thereafter to speak to the family. We had a long conversation with him. I will take him at his word. I know the boxing program has been suspended, and I know that they're reviewing the Marine Corps style training. I think one of the problems with the state police, and it's been a problem for a long time, in my opinion, is they become, there's this sort of idea that they're elite, and there's this idea that they're insular, that they're not responsible for their behavior, that they are somehow at a different level, and that they can interact that way with people. I think training them militarily is not useful. I don't think in today's world that puts you in the better position vis-a-vis the public. I think you need more of a community approach. I think you need to understand that people today are not people of the 1940s and 50s who are compliant in every respect. We have a lot of people walking around with mental health issues. We have a lot of people using drugs today and that need that type of intervention, and they don't need this kind of brute force, and they don't need this, Marine Corps kind of approach to training either. There have been stories of Massachusetts State Police. One group of cadets, there were several injuries, and they were forcing them to do a crab walk across a hot paved parking area. and several of them burned their hands. I mean, there's a lot of that type of thing that is reported. The Boston Globe has done a story on a couple of these instances.
That's crazy.
There's this effort to sort of be like, and I don't mean to, believe me, besmirch the Marine Corps, but they have a very pro macho kind of approach to training.
Yeah.
And the Massachusetts State Police is emulating that. They live by themselves. Most academies in the state people live at home, and they go to work every day, and that work is the training academy for the day. The Boston police typically do that, like the Worcester police do that. The state police live in barracks during the week, at least. They were allowed home on weekends. So they're kept away from a lot of other things. And the training is intensive, and I get that. And I think it's the longest academy in the state. And you hear all this stuff about the way that they're fed, the way that they're trained, and getting up and running when they're not supposed to, and running in the rain and doing all this sort of stuff. I don't know how much of that serves the public. I just don't know that it makes a better police officer to be trained like a military person.
That's really interesting. What about comparison to other states? The other 49 states, do they have similar?
I wouldn't know. I don't have a lot of experience with other states. I know I've been looking at the Massachusetts State Police. I've looked a little bit at the Texas version. I think the state police tend to be that way. They want to be the elite of the various states. And I get to some degree, I think that that's warranted, but I don't think it needs to be trained the way that it's trained.
All right. There's been a lot of focus in recent years. I mean, Enrique's death came right in between the two Karen Reed trials. Karen Reed was tried twice. There's the Sandra Birchmore case in which, it's been alleged that there was a cover-up. The Miles King case in which Michael Proctor's phone was found going back 13 years, and now that's been brought into as many as 19 other cases. Stepping back from the Enrique Delgado-Garcia case, do you think there needs to be an overall look at Blue Ribbon panel, look at the Massachusetts State Police overall and just their approach and what they do on a day-to-day basis?
Going back further to the overtime scandal, when they were doing the fake details, and many of them were indicted. I think that an overall review of the Massachusetts State Police is long, long overdue. I think that Michael Proctor, you can look at that as an isolated, like one rotten apple, but I think that'd be foolhardy. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there's a culture in the state police where that type of behavior was maybe not encouraged, but certainly not discouraged. And I think, when he's talking about a subject in a potential murder investigation, in the disgusting terms he was talking about that woman, he jeopardized that case. And whether or not, regardless of how you believe that should have come out, it was almost assured a not guilty because of his conduct.
Yes.
And I think that it appeared to be, it's amateurish. It appeared to be, sophomorish. It was,
disgusting.
A woman's appearance. I mean, come on. I mean,
it was not only like bias against women; it was a bias against her personally.
Yeah,
it was almost like
the stuff you saw him write was disgusting. And he's a professional investigator. That in my estimation, no, but that undermines everything that we should understand about police officers, right?
Absolutely.
That's so far over the line that it's almost laughable. And then you hear about other instances, and you hear about them cheating on the overtime. And, was there any reform after that? I mean, I don't understand how that could happen. And he's one of the higher level investigators for the state police at the time he was investigating Karen Reed. Did nobody not hear about the other stuff that he'd done?
That was in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, and just in our last episode, we did a review of a case in which an officer out of the Woburn, Middlesex County District Attorney's Office allegedly caused a death because he was driving a state police cruiser with a BAC level of 0.11, and it was covered up for 2 years. So that's two different barracks. One, it's two different DA's office, the state police, and two different DA's offices, one in Middlesex and one in Norfolk. is having the state police colonel, and I don't know Mr. Noble, I've never met him, never talked to him, I'm not going to cast any aspersions against him, but is it enough to have the state police look at themselves, or do we need the legislature to come in and do something, or the legislature and the governor and the attorney general all together to appoint some kind of a panel for an overall review of the whole rotten basket?
Yeah, so even going further back than that, I'm familiar with the case out of Middlesex County where a state trooper was accused of sexually assaulting and sexually beating his fellow state trooper girlfriend. And I believe he got 10 years in prison for that.
Oh.
But the facts of that case, that culture, the state police, heavy on the alcohol, heavy on the rah-rah, old boy kind of network, I think it's way past due to have a citizen review board. I think it's necessary to have a judge or a couple of judges, some lawyers and some citizens to review complaints and to review the entire operation.
And change.
I don't think that they should be viewed. They should be allowed to view themselves as a distinct, separate paramilitary organization.
Agree.
There's no room for that.
Agree.
They need to be more in tune with today's culture, today's citizenry. And I think that it's just, you can't just beat people. You can't just, make jokes about
your power.
Subjects who are going through the most difficult time in their lives, whether Karen Reed in particular did that or didn't do that. She doesn't deserve to be spoken about as a sexual object by this clown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem. And there's, so that you have to come away from that, understanding there's some rot in the state police of Massachusetts. That should never happen. And it should not take 6 months to get someone removed from that position when those facts come to light.
Yep.
That's why you have people coming into the state police who do this kind of thing to Enrique.
Yes.
Right.
They felt they were above the law.
Above the law.
What is an SOP? So here's a misconception.
Above
A lot
the
of people
law.
think an SOP is just a boring manual that nobody ever reads. But
Commercial.
So sad.
It just, imagine sending your son or your daughter, or your brother off for training to become a state trooper. And this is a Hispanic family. These people were extremely proud of Enrique. Not a lot of Hispanic people get that opportunity, and they were proud of him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do this. And you get a call that he's laying in the hospital on life support. And they see him, and the surgeon asked, when the surgeon came out and said, was this a head-on collision? That's the extent of the injuries he had.
It's totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. Do you think it's enough? I mean, they said that these 4 who were just indicted will not be arrested, but instead they'll just get a summons to appear in court for an arraignment. Is that enough?
Well, I think, let me ask you this. Let me answer your question with a question. Do you think that if this was a private citizen charged with involuntary manslaughter, that he or she would have the courtesy of
course not.
No.
Scheduled arraignment?
No.
Come on. That's part of the bias that exists within this institutional criminal justice system. I
guess you returned a rhetorical question with a rhetorical question. That's okay.
Right.
Is your client, or is the family of Enrique Delgado-Garcia, are they going to bring a civil lawsuit?
They should bring a civil lawsuit.
Yes, at this point. It's sort of complicated by the indictments, and the timing of it is certainly complicated by.
No. Why a civil lawsuit and not a criminal lawsuit? So that part I don't understand either.
The indictments.
Sure.
But there are statute of limitations issues that have to be addressed, and we have to get things done within those limits. So it is likely to be filed before this case, the criminal cases are resolved.
Yeah.
They'll probably be stayed so that you can respect the officer's rights and not have them at deposition, have them completing discovery requests while they have Fifth Amendment privileges.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of it's got to be handled. But I would say that, yes, the family is going to seek some compensation for this, and I think they should.
Yeah, they should.
Am I not asking, before we move along, is there anything you'd like to say that we haven't asked you?
The family is very gratified that this process has started in earnest and that the criminal process has begun. I think that they finally have that point where they can see some light at the end of this long, difficult tunnel. Every time I talk to Enrique's mom, I'm struck by how devastated she remains. This has been a long time, and she is just absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
And
She would be. It's your son. And he was young. He's 24, 25 years old.
I can't. I can't. A few things that are very important to mention is that the what came out on the autopsy back in August was that the manner of death was not the manner, but the cause of death, if I'm not mistaken, it reflected back then, because this was done back in August 2025, it said that it was accidental. And that was the manner of death. And the cause of death were complications of intracranial hemorrhages caused by injuries according to documents, blah, 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 right? So I'm interested to know, and I'm going to try to reach out to either Jolie, Medina, or Atty Myers to ask if what happens with the autopsy result. Do they change them? Now that the investigation is over and it revealed something different, will they change the autopsy report? And especially the manner of death, because now they know that it wasn't accidental, right? Now they know that that it was based on a fight. And they also know, as David Mayer said on his press conference, that it was as a result of engaging with those three individuals the night of the 11th, the people that he fought. So I'm curious to know whether that would change things. What happens now? And when Attorney Wilcox is talking about the time, right? So the statute of limitations, what does that mean? Do they have to do something civilly before they continue with the criminally, or backwards? Do they have to finish with the criminal part before they do something civil? And when does each one of those rights expired? Like, if they don't do something by what time, they can't do anything anymore. That's what I would like to have somebody explain to me, just so we can memorialize it and put it on a live and have some sort of explanations in case that the family wanted to not only consult with their lawyer, but go back and listen to something. They would listen to something that gives them some additional information. And some of these videos I'm going to translate to Spanish too. I'm going to do the captions in Spanish just in case. But the majority of everybody speaks English. But there's a lot of people that are getting these videos in another country, and I want them to fully understand it. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to share that. I didn't want to share the entire thing because I want to give the original stream the credit and the views and the likes of everybody. Everybody should be thankful that Attorney Mayer and Jolie Medina did this and took the time to interview Attorney Wilcox and allowed us all to get to know him a little, because nobody had heard from him, had seen him. I didn't know him. A lot of us I know, we didn't know him. And now we have a feeling of what he looks like, the perception of him. I think he sounds pretty genuine. And he sounds like he cares, like he's beaten and hurt by how he still perceives Enrique's mom being extremely sad still after a year and months after this event happened. He's still saying that he hurts every time that he sees her. So that says a lot. He's very upset about the entire thing. And why would they have this type of exercises in the 21st century still in the Massachusetts State Police? So let's hope that Coral Noble, in one of the efforts that he's trying to change and do and implement now in the academy, and things that he's trying to avoid, the exercise has been stopped. So they're not doing any boxing, right? Yeah. And yeah, I don't forget that press conference, but don't forget that was the first press conference that was held the Monday after Enrique was unplugged from the life support equipment at the hospital. and that was the next day. It wasn't done by this attorney. That was done by the Worcester district attorney, and in his office. That was early. That's his last name. And that was the Monday after. So I want to say it was September 14th, 2024. And it's still out there. It's still available. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know that she is less hurt than when she was on September 14, 13, 2024. I don't think that ever goes away. So, but, you know, keep praying for them and keep praying for the family, and that this will get resolved somehow. After watching Attorney Wilcox, I feel a little better, and a little digging on his family name. And it's funny because it says that the early origins of the Wilcox last name come from what it means is William or Wilhelm. That's the term that originates from. And they further found that the name Wilcox is derived from a Germanic element, will, that means resolve. And I found it so, I mean, it's like mind-blowing. Resolve. The part helm, on the other hand, means protection. So, you know, what the whole name means is the son of little William, which means he, she who protects. So that was pretty interesting to me. And I like genealogy and the origin of names and where do they come from. In this case, his family is a combination of Scotland, Ireland, and England. So that was pretty interesting. Resolve, protect. The son of William. That's pretty cool. So we're going to wrap it up. We have other shows going on, and we want to be supportive to everybody. So thank you for those who showed up and made me company. And until the next time, take care, you all.